Welcome back to the podcast series Leadership by Kevin Sturlaugson. So, our last podcast, we talked about our staff and employees as being the most important resource that we have on our teams, in our organization. So, this podcast, I want to focus on who are we as leaders that we're able to leverage those resources to the best of our abilities. So, I've named this podcast episode Being Humble and Listening to Others. And in being humble and listening to others, there's four primary pillars that I can think of drive our discussion areas here. The first is recognizing value in others. The second is the introspective look of who are we and what can we bring to the table for us and our team and our organization. External input is another pillar, and that's how open are we to receiving feedback and input, and how are we providing that same constructive feedback and input to others, and then being willing to serve others. Are we willing to be that person that gives them the support and the needs that they have to achieve whatever outcomes they're trying to accomplish? So let's first dive into the first pillar of recognizing value in others, and it starts out first with knowing yourself and knowing your limits. Do you know what your strengths are? Do you know what your skills and capabilities are that you bring to the table? Now, that doesn't mean that if you're strong in those areas that you don't value input from others. It just means that you know what you bring to the table and understand that you shouldn't ever be the smartest person in the room or the only one that has value of information in that strength area. You should be willing to listen to others to get that other perspective, other sets of information to get a better quality set of data to work from. And then where you have weaknesses, and I believe in the strength based leadership concept of operate in your strength areas, and then where you have weaknesses, doesn't mean you don't work on trying to improve those weaknesses, but those weaknesses will likely not become strengths because it takes the rate of return on investment in your strength areas to improvement till they become a strength is so astronomical that you would get much better improvement just putting that energy into your strength area and being even better in those strengths. And then finding others that have strengths in those areas you have weakness and bring them alongside and utilize them to help in those areas. And part of the reason you do that is it provides you more engagement and input from your staff, from external stakeholders, from partners, which provides more information and more opportunities that may not have been brought to the table if you saw yourself as the only person that had value in that communication or in that engagement, and therefore what you perceived was the only information to care about and take forward really limits you compared to what you would get if you engage others, lean into their strengths to help provide additional information and context and data points to work from, and it helps them feel like they're valued. So they'll engage more, they'll become more active, and want to become an even better asset for the company or the organization. So let's talk about the second pillar. This is our introspective look. And I say introspective as in the first part, you're looking at yourself and understanding what are your growth needs and what support do you need from others in your growth. I don't believe in the concept that you can ever be the perfect person, the perfect leader, the best at anything. There's always going to be opportunities for growth and improvement. It may be minimal, but there's still room. So I believe we should all go in with the aspect of how can I be better as a leader? How can I be better as a part of this organization? How can I be better for my staff? And keep that mindset as we're looking at where do I need to grow? And it'll also help if you're willing to reach out to others that you know can help you grow in those areas. It's making you vulnerable, but that vulnerability in a culture that knows that you care about those people, they're not going to use it in a negative way. They're going to use it in a way to want to come alongside and help you grow in that area. They're going to be a partner in that growth with you. I know, back in the 90s, there was the old book, How to Swim with the Sharks, without getting eaten alive. And there, it wasn't showing vulnerability. I think in a pure environment where you're just trying to beat somebody out in a competition, maybe, but not when we're talking about how do we become a better organization or team as a whole. I think there we have to understand that until we're vulnerable with each other and give each other the opportunity to come alongside and help us in those areas, then we start developing trust because we know that we've opened ourselves up to providing an area of ourselves that we may not be comfortable sharing. And people a lot of times will take that as an appreciation that you value them and that you trust them, and it just makes us better teammates, better, you know, organizations as a whole. And then as we're going through and growing, not just ourselves, but as others are growing in the same perspective, because your team should be looking at each other on the team should be doing the same thing, looking at themselves on how do they improve and become better, is giving those opportunities for growth. And when we make mistakes, because we're human, we all make mistakes. Nobody's perfect, as we talked about at the beginning of this pillar, that you give that psychologically safe environment for people to make the mistake and grow from it, learn from it. It's how you react and how you overcome those mistakes that make a difference. So, are are you or your staff or stakeholders, when a mistake is made, are they using that opportunity to identify the root cause and then put in measures of proactivity to reduce the opportunity of that mistake being repeated again, which I think is what we should all be going after, vice trying to, take somebody you know, to the negative aspect of their careers or their uh, job and use those as times to grow. All of us aren't born innately right away to make decisions that we make, to do the work we do. It all takes time to learn the skills, learn, how to make the best decisions. And so we have to allow that opportunity for growth. Now, if we have people that are just repetitive offenders, that's a different story, right? Then you have to do corrective actions with individuals. But outside of that, we should be trying to drive a culture of identifying what's the root cause and how do we minimize that that cause. Is it training for a person? Is it changing processes? Is it putting checkpoints in place? Whatever that is. So let's move on to the next pillar, our external input. In other words, are we open to feedback and input? If we've already understand our limits, we already agree that we're not going to be perfect. There's opportunity for growth. Others bring value. Then we should be willing to open ourselves up to get feedback and input from others. And when we do this, we're creating opportunity for others to grow. We're creating opportunities for more information, for better decision making, and we're improving ourselves. We should understand that there's always going to be something we hadn't thought of, or something that others can bring, that bring additional context or impacts that weren't considered. It goes back to that podcast, the last one, where I said I'd rather be with 100 brains working on a solution than one super brain. So you have to come in with that perspective. And then you have to do, what feedback and input you give or that you receive, you should be trying to drive it in a constructive mechanism. This means if you're giving feedback or trying to receive feedback on how to do things better, it shouldn't be done in a way that's demeaning to the person, or for them giving it to you in a way that demeans you. It should be done in a way that provides an opportunity to understand it can be done better, and provide guideline or support in being able to do so. I think when we go and provide feedback to others, sometimes it is done in an emotional mind state that can be come across negative. And when it does that, it's not useful. It's not going to provide us the the growth opportunities that we really need to drive and thrive for. So make sure it's done in a constructive way, that it's not emotional, um, unless the emotion is to in a positive way, to try and show that you care and that you want to help, for the organization in the whole. And then for the last pillar, willing to serve others. So hopefully you came into leadership because you wanted to make a difference, because you felt like what you could bring to the table would be better for the team, better for the organization, better for the whole. If you have gotten into leadership for the title or the pay, then you probably aren't ready to be that leader that the organization needs. And if that's you, I apologize if that comes across strong, but I think people that chase titles, they do it thinking that it's going to gain them respect, it's going to gain them standing in an organization. And really, a title is just a title. It's just a name. It doesn't gain you any of those things. You can gain respect no matter where you're at in the organization. Just if you have respect when you're at a higher level within the organization, a higher responsibility level, higher decision making level, then you can make a bigger difference. So, and then as far as the the pay, I think if you talk to most leaders, just like my journey in leadership career, in most cases, yes, I did get a pay raise when I would go up higher in the leadership chain, but it usually wasn't significant enough to really, um, be comprehensive to the responsibilities and the level of work and effort that it requires to be a good leader in an organization. And so you'll never get the compensatory pay that goes with the significance that leadership role can provide in the organization, which drives to the aspect of, if you're doing the leadership role because you want to make a difference, and you want to help others grow, you want to serve them, then you're going to be a very effective leader. And it starts with, one, taking the focus off you. When you're a leader wanting to serve others, you're no longer focused on yourself. You're focused on those around you, and and what do they need from you? You know, and it's not just on the professional side, but also on the personal side, because there's the work life balance that has to come into play that you need to make sure is being handled in a way that allows them to be their true selves when they come into the office and work. And when I say come to the office, doesn't mean physical. They could be virtual, remote, whatever. But that they don't have to be somebody they aren't. Because when somebody's operating in an area that they're not, it takes a lot more energy than if they are able to just come in with who they are and perform. So, do you understand who they are as a person, where they want to go professionally? What do they need from you professionally to either grow or achieve whatever tasks or projects or whatever they're taking on? And then the final view that you should be taking when you're serving others is you want to do what's better for the greater good. Are we being that type of leader that brings others to the table and wants to help leverage everybody in their strengths, in their values, in their capabilities to drive the best performance, the best capabilities that the organization or your team can achieve. So to wrap this up, as we talked about, if you want to be the most effective leader that you can be for your organization, for your staff, you need to recognize the value in others. You need to understand what your capabilities are, where you need to grow, where you can leverage others to help you in your own journey and how you can help them in their journey. You have to be open to receiving and giving constructive feedback and providing input to others. So that way you're all trying to come along together on the journey as one. And then you have to be doing it with the mindset that you're there to serve, that you're there to be the leader that can give them the guidance, the input, the support that they need to overcome the challenges and the hurdles and become the best performers that they can be for the organization as a whole. I hope you found this podcast beneficial for you. If you're somebody that's already, been in the leadership journey and you're listening to this, hopefully you found a couple nuggets that you could put in your leadership toolbox to help give you some better strength as a leader. If you're somebody that's just trying to get into the leadership journey or just starting the leadership journey, I hope this podcast has helped you to look at ways to be a more effective leader from the onset, the beginning of your journey, instead of learning down the road like some of us have, where we started out with the old, you know, competition with others mentality instead of bringing others along in the journey. So I hope you found this beneficial for you all. I do appreciate any feedback. So if you are listening to this and have some comments, either constructive feedback on how I can make it better as the podcast goes, any topics that you think might be beneficial that I maybe don't already have considered for the series that I might need to add in, or if there's some information here that maybe you think was beneficial in helping you or thinks maybe you don't necessarily 100% agree with or align with. I love feedback. I love engagement. So please provide it back to me. And other than that, have a great day.